Yes, we are going. We're live. We're live. Part 2, right?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I see it here. It says this live event will begin in a few moments. Has it begun?
Says it has.
Okay.
There you go. Live.
You're live there.
Okay.
It's alive.
It's alive.
I'm sure they know that.
I think it's alive now.
I can't find it.
Well, they have to go to the channel. The Urban Dharma North Carolina channel. So delay a little. Well, before the question from there, questions here.
Everything was so quiet, I didn't know there was.
Yes.
It's a question, it's more of a comment.
Sure.
When I'm meditating at home, I find that I can't turn my mind off at all very easily, like. So
What do you mean by turning it off?
I'm always like later, the thoughts are always coming in. So constantly saying later. But when I'm here, I can't stay awake when I'm meditating. And it just seems like two extremes, two extreme experiences.
I think when we're starting this, it's helpful to again kind of find more optimal conditions in which to do the practice. So at home, it might be that you say, I'm now walking into this room, and this is the room where I meditate. Oh, I'm now seated in this square in the house. And always go back to the same place. It's important, the point about later is not to just kind of say later, but rather, when you walk into that space, that determination, and say, no, I'm just not going to. I mean, we do that all the time, right? You're like, now I'm at work, Well, now I'm at work, but I got to refresh my screen to see what's going on Facebook, right? Unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, because we've been habitualized to, just constantly multitasking, because culturally, this is good. This shows that you're really efficient. In fact, the Buddhist with 1,000 arms is multitasking, but not our kind of multitasking. We become so scattered. So first of all, maybe it's just our expression, but even the expression, I think there's something there. And so first of all, don't think of it as turning off. Think of it as directing traffic. Traffic is going to be the same, but you're directing traffic. So instead of traffic going elsewhere, for now you say traffic is going to be marshaled in the direction of, depending on, how long you have done this practice, it could just simply be traffic is now being directed to this feeling of having a body. So direct all traffic to sensations of the body. So find something that would attract your attention to the set of work that you want to do, if that's helpful. For some people, thinking of meditation as work is not helpful at all. Then that 10 minutes is about, now it's unplugging time. It's doing nothing time. And at the very least, I can give myself 10 minutes a day of doing nothing whatsoever. Then you might find that awareness kind of gathers. It varies. Yeah, it varies.
Would you recommend doing something with like you put the thing on your head, but I could imagine still falling asleep with that on my head and like having it fall into my lap. Like doing something with an unusual sensation, like holding sand between your hands.
Something, yeah, you explore to see, and the idea is, of course, after a while, you don't need that.
Melting jello.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a bowl of water on your head.
Boiling the water.
Or a book on top of your head.
A book, or
Back in the old days, the ladies had to walk with a book on their head. They walk like a lady.
Now, the paying attention to dukkha. So one thing I should also say is that when you pay attention to dukkha, then when you become sensitized to dukkha, then you also understand that the strength of that feeling of dukkha is strongest when you hold tightest to it. So one of the purposes of noting dukkha is to then say, let go. To let go. To release. So you let go. And then sometimes you're noting inconstancy. And inconstancy there includes how the mind is constantly moving. To train to see the mind moving itself. So that's why I've said before, you can't really fail if you are skillful in approaching whatever situation your mind wants to play with you. You're like, okay, that's fine. Now is the time we play. Let's see what you're up to today. It says sleepy, sleepy, sleepy. Right? Then you apply that particular tool. And you don't know how it's going to work, actually, whether you're going to fall asleep or not. You actually don't. Do it. Just do it. Too often we don't do it. We think about it. Thinking about it and doing it are different. We just do it. Not think about it. Don't think too much about it. Just do it. I know it sounds like this. Just no, it sounds like this cycle, like chasing itself, But really, don't think about it. So you say, so I say something like, watch awareness. And then, you're like, well, what does that mean? No, just don't. That's thinking about it. Right? Because awareness, is knowing. So you watch, you say, what am I watching? Then the next moment, right? Remember that kind of instruction. Watch your awareness. See if you can see it. Admittedly, that's not so easy. We can see the activities of the heart, but we cannot see the heart so easily. But if you begin by watching the activities of the heart, after a while, you can trace back to the origins of those activities, which is the heart. Awareness, knowing. So now let's try this. So again, find a position that's comfortable. And part of the position of being comfortable is also a position that allows you to be alert. So don't be too comfortable. Because too comfortable, then the sleepiness comes in. Yeah, so if you sit in a particular spot, it's not helping, move to another spot. That spot doesn't help, move to another spot. That spot doesn't help, stand up. Standing up doesn't help, walk backwards. Yeah, you do whatever. These are all different tools. Yeah, so now just sit in a comfortable position, or stand if you feel that need. Just stand. So place your body in a comfortable position. Elongate your spine. Make sure your shoulders are open. Then breathe in and out a few times deliberately. This exercise here, I want you to take one of these spaces and bring your awareness to either the physical space that your body is placed in, or the space in which sound is occurring. So you might hear the sound of the air condition. You might hear the sound of my voice. You might hear the sound of your heart beating. Whatever sound that you hear, listen to that space where sound is occurring and see if you can hear anything. So that's a much subtler object. A grosser object would be aware of the space that your body is placed in. Then even more subtle than that space in which sound is occurring is the space in between thoughts, or the space in between an inhalation and an exhalation. So now this exercise is an exercise of noting space. If you're using physical space as your object, try to let your awareness be all around the contours of your body, and try to feel that space in between your body and space, that meeting point throughout your body. And then let your awareness go from your skin and out into the space that surrounds your skin. If you're using the space in which sound occurs, try to listen to that which is behind the sounds. And if you're using visual space, yet another object, then using your eyes, see if you can see space. Can space be the object of sight? Look for that space. Whether the felt sense of space, or visual space, or the space behind sounds, or the space between thoughts, alternate your attention to looking for that space and just relaxing into that space. All that we really need to do is just in that one moment. In every moment, catch kind of that awareness. And then that's it. It's all momentary. There's the illusion of, we have meditated 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's a concept. That's conceptual. And you can't really meditate for 5 minutes. You can only be present for a moment. So even that inconstancy, that is still inconstancy. And it's sort of like attuning our kind of awareness so that we see the inconstancy of that. But that very seeing is where some sort of stability is occurring. Kind of like the part that is still and the part that is moving. So always there's these two parts going on. The stillness and the movement. So I read that one of the last teachings that this great forest master Ajahn Chah gave as a public teaching. He, in one of the last kind of public teaching that he gave before he was in a coma for years, actually. He used this expression of, he asked this question, he said, do you all know moving water? And his students said, yes. And he says, have you seen still water? And they're like, yes. He said, what about still moving waters? He said, train that. And obviously, he's not talking about water. That our minds, our awareness, it's like water. It's always moving. To try to halt it, it's futile. But in the midst of all that movement, there is a quiet place. And so another way of looking at what we're training is we're training in recognizing that quiet place. See, right now, we have very little ability to handle all the movements. We like certain types of movements, and we don't like certain other types of movements. So we pick and choose. And the more we pick and choose, the more we become kind of ingrained in, right, choosing one set of movements over another set of movements. So then we have to spend a lot of time controlling, so that it's only this type of movement and not this type of movement. And as long as that's going on, then there is no rest. The mistake is to think, how can I halt? How can I halt the moving of this water? Then it becomes a stale pond. And it's dead. Yeah, then it's yuck. So we're not aiming for that either, for this stale, dead body of water. What we're doing is let the river continue flowing, but learn to note that quiet place. So stillness and movement sound, and silence. If we begin to train to note the dance, so to say, of these two, then freedom arises. And then we're not being dragged around by conditions and circumstances, which is where dukkha arises. To be dragged around by circumstances and conditions. So every time we find ourselves being dragged around, first we recognize, being dragged around, that's dukkha. Maybe earlier I sort of confused you a little bit when I used pain. Pain, maybe it's not so good because, yes, there is the experience of physical pain, but that's not necessarily what dukkha is talking about. Dukkha is talking about the mental pain that comes as a consequence of things not being agreeable to us.
The concept that the pain is disagreeable.
Yes.
Rather than the pain itself.
Yes. Yeah. So another teacher of a senior teacher in the mindfulness movement, Shinzen Yang, he very helpful. He says equation. He says pain multiplied by resistance equals dukkha. Specifically, he works a lot with people with like physical pain. So in that context, he says dukkha is not that physical pain itself. That physical pain sometimes can be fixed, sometimes cannot be fixed. But in that context, we should understand that the dukkha that Buddha is talking about is the resistance, the result of pain multiplied by resistance. Resistance in the sense of not accepting that this is what's going on. And then the concept of, I do not deserve this, or I deserve this equally. Right? It's dukkha. Because you have owned it. So the strategy of not self. Yeah, there's pain, but nobody needs to carry it around. You can just let it be. And so he says, the bad news is, of course, the pain, when the conditions are right, that happens. But then the good news is, dukkha can become zero if we reduce resistance to zero. So in other cases, like we find ourselves in a circumstance that is disagreeable with us. Maybe it's too hot. And of course, the first thing is, can that be changed? Well, if that can be changed, then change. But even that, in this tradition, it says don't immediately. See, these habits start from the small details. It's not in the big picture. We often think that, it's in the big picture, so I want to do something to change the big picture. But this big picture, the so-called big picture that we have, the big suffering and the big happiness that we have, they are composite. They are composed of smaller parts. And it's at the smaller parts where we habituate. So in terms of practice, it is as simple as, again, don't think about it, oh, that's a cute idea. Do it. Which is, there's an itch. Don't scratch it yet. Pay attention to it. Or if you are the kind where everything has to be neat, your work table, right? You see something off, don't do anything with it yet. Just watch it and watch your discomfort with things out of place. Watch it, watch it, watch it, and then see. Yeah, this is because then we learn the activities of the heart.
And then fix it.
And then, that's me. Yeah, so learning, working with other people, like you want to control that space, but also learning, like, no, just watch. Watch your reaction. And then you can see how people react to your reaction. And so much of stuff kind of comes up from there. Yes.
This is I'll just say this is not me. It's another Jessica. Jessica has ADHD. She's really trying hard to sit and listen and do the meditation, but she feels extremely jittery. Do you have any advice for a young person who has been trained in inattention to begin to approach this practice?
Lie down. Lie down and try to do these exercises. Might be helpful. And also helpful to know this is not doing anything. This is letting it be. So even the jitteriness, don't feed it, but if you feel the jitteriness, just say, okay, I'm gonna lie down and feel jittery. Just watch the jitteriness. Don't make any experience that arises an enemy. Then when you make them an enemy, then you have to go fight the enemy. But see, when the so-called enemy comes, when experience arises, right? We are so programmed to classify friend and foe, desirable, undesirable, right? If desirable, we engage. If undesirable, we ignore. What our practice is doing here is to remain present and not label friend and foe. Initially, they're still going to arise as friend and foe. But you want to understand, okay, I'm labeling this as foe, and I'm labeling this as friend, but they are my labels. What we're training is to remain present, sort of like think of it as, that big field. Yeah, for the cats. Back to the cats.
What was the cat thing?
The cat thing, the crazy cat's locked in the closet,
Oh.
and they're clawing, and you're in there, and you're trying to get them to settle, Don't do that. Yeah. Just because see, when something undesirable turns up, we have learned unskillful strategies of either ignoring it or turning it around or fight it or all of that. So what we're trying to do now is just not do anything, but not check out. Be totally present, watch it, and say, it is what it is. So a word in kind of Mahayana especially, they say suchness. Those of you, if you have come across this word, this is what it means, suchness. It is what it is. Such is what's going on. Are you going to deny it? Are you going to cover over it and paint it all pink or blue or whatever color you like? All those are just, adding more layers. So holding our awareness in the midst of, whatever. So even sleepiness, it's like recognize that and say, well, this is what's going on. So don't make it an enemy. But don't give up like this training in the sitting. Because once you give that up, then the situation will not change. But don't feel like, you're battling something. And so the point about the later is sort of like working with the situation, right? You're not saying you're not important, I don't like you or I hate you. It's to prevent, right, a stronger response from coming up. Yeah. So again, meditative traditions, there are many, many different approaches. This is one approach to working with the mind that I think is quite beneficial for many of us. There are other like more traditional texts within, the tradition that I'm familiar with, that talks about relating to distractions, like they are robbers, and you are a guard, with a sword that you strike them down each time it turns up. My experience, I think, for many people, it's too hard. And that works really well when you are under house arrest or monastery. Then because you're 24/7, there's the whole support system, there's the whole context to kind of, channel, the energy and the intensity along those ways. But none of us live in those environments, so I don't know how effective those techniques would work. Now, all I'm saying is that, there are many, many approaches and techniques. This particular way of understanding the material, I think, will be helpful. Again, we can't just talk about it, you have to do it. And part of doing it might be coming with a group of people who you sort of suspect is doing the same thing. Of course, ultimately, we don't know. So every Tuesday night, 7:30 to 8:30, John facilitates a sitting group here. So come to that if you can. Then the final of these 4 classes will be next Sunday, 2 to 4 again. Then later in the fall, we might continue this in another form. I think sometimes it's good to have the schedule day-long sittings, because if you need to have some kind of experience of that. I mean, of course, the constant training is daily, but from time to time to have a day-long sitting, of course, with breaks and all that, you begin to kind of focus things a little, and that's really helpful, because it will help you when you're not doing the day-long sitting. I think we should try to schedule some, at least once a month, there's a day-long sitting. I think that will be helpful. Any questions?
And Sam does it Tuesday night, right?
I think it's him. Indeed, I think it's him.